To help us unpack the ever-changing situation, we're joined from Kyiv by Mr. Ivan Us, advisor at the Ukrainian National Center, and from London by Mr. Nicholas Williams, a former NATO official. Thank you both for joining me here on Think Tank. Let's start off with you, Mr. Us, now. With the Russian forces advancing nearer to the Kupiansk and evacuations expanding, can Ukraine continue to hold the line without immediate Tomahawk missile support?
Greetings to you, Reham, greetings to Mr. Nicholas, and greetings to Qnews audience. Thank you for invitation. You know, Reham, of course, in Kupiansk we have some problems, but I couldn't say that they're so serious. Furthermore, Tomahawks, those rockets, they are not for striking in such distance, they are for longer distance. And I don't think that the destiny of Tomahawk rockets, missiles, will influence on the battle for Kupiansk. Nevertheless, it can influence on the destiny of this whole war. Of course, it could not be game changer, but they can, of course, help to Ukraine, first of all, to organize strikes on the main military production of Russia. First of all, the main target number one, will be Yelaboga. It's a place in Russia where Russia produced their drones. So if Ukraine succeeds to destroy drones, it's a threat, every night threat to Ukraine. Of course, it will be easier in the whole situation in the war. But as for Kupiansk, I think that it should be some other things, not long-range missiles. It's rather tanks or some other military vehicles and weapons that will help to war with Russian infantry in that battlefield. Thank you, Reham.
Okay, Mr. Williams, now can we get your opinion on NATO? NATO has urged more arms going into Ukraine, but the Allies hesitate. Is this alliance risking some sort of strategic irrelevance on Europe's eastern flank, or is there a real fear that this may possibly, cause some sort of retribution from the Russians and expand the war?
Well, the problem is the West and the United States believe that the Russians are getting into an economic difficulty and are vulnerable to economic pressure. And this idea of supplying Tomahawks to Ukraine will force Russia to make concessions and go into a peace deal. I don't think there's any sign of that. Russia is weakening its resolve and its determination to crush Ukraine. And as long as Europe and the United States believe that Tomahawk weapons or additional sanctions will prevail, I think they're mistaken, because only military force and shooting down and establishing air defense over Ukraine will make any difference.
But there must be a real fear as well, because the Russians are quite adamant in their response. Peskov came out with a response saying it's a wait-and-see game, but he did mention, that there is a possibility of escalations if, these Tomahawks are provided to the Ukrainians. Is there a fear within Europe that this may expand?
Yes, it is, and there's a real fear, and Europe, despite its protestations and support for Ukraine, doesn't want to cross the red line where Russia actively targets by its ballistic missiles, not by its drones, its sites in Europe, particularly Poland. And so there is a fear, and I think the fear is most prevalent in powerful countries like Germany, France, and the United Kingdom, despite their statements to the contrary.
Okay, Mr. Lewis, if we can get your opinion here as well. Now, does Trump's Gaza style diplomacy, where we've seen him go out and say, this is my friend, and so forth, he made it personal and reached the agreement based on, the personal connections. Is this style of diplomacy going to offer some sort of real hope for Kiev, or just another way for the Russians or Moscow to delay and continue to dig deeper into Ukraine?
Reham, I think that the main problem that Donald Trump thinks that, oh, I have a good relationship with President Putin, that's why we can have a deal. But Vladimir Putin is a person who living with an idea in reincarnation of the Soviet Union. When Russia starts full-scale war on February 2022, Russia planned to finish it approximately in 2 or 3 months. And then after, as Russia expected victory in Ukraine, they could start pressure on other former Soviet Union republic and to return all of them under Moscow control till December 2022, because in December 2022, it was 100th anniversary of the creation of the Soviet Union. For Putin, it was very important. That's why now, when Donald Trump thinks that, oh, I can have a deal, Putin lived in his world. Yes. Putin lived in his ideas. That's why I don't expect him to make some steps towards the idea that Donald Trump proposed.
Also, there's the issue, yes, Trump is attempting the personal diplomacy, but also Putin is making his own moves. Like we're seeing President Ashura meeting at the high-level meeting in Moscow. What does this signal? Does this strengthen the Moscow relations with Syria now? Does this come in as what they would call a diplomacy in parallel strategy and undercut Western efforts to somehow isolate the Russians globally?
Reham, of course, it will be very interesting visit. First of all, we should take into account that it should be meeting between Russia and leaders of Arab countries, but leaders of Arab countries decided not to visit Moscow. It was a very bad signal for President Putin. Or, as I remember, 2 of 22 decided to be there. One of them, it's al-Shara, the leader of Syria. But you should understand that from Russian perspective, the al-Shara, it's a person who demonstrates the Russia geopolitical defeat. Russia, which built a relationship with Assad family, with Hafiz Assad, and then with his son Bashar Assad, for many years was sure that Syria under their control. I received signals from Syria that Bashar Assad organized a recruiting procedure for soldiers in Syria to be on the war on the Russian side against Ukraine. And when al-Shara make those revolution in Syria, when he substituted Bashar Assad, of course, he represents the power that have a lot of questions to Russia. And sometimes if you switch on Syrian experts close to al-Shara and to new power in Syria, they said that Russia should pay money not only for Ukraine for the aggression, but for Syria too. Because a lot of things that Russia used against Ukraine, like a double tap and so on, they used against Syria, against Syrian hospitals. And Syria remember that, and Bashar, let's call it so, pro al-Shara TV channels, like Al Jazeera, for example, they constantly remind about that there are a lot of questions. And as for me, al-Shara now visiting Moscow, I don't think that he will ask Putin to give him Bashar Assad in this trip, but nevertheless, we remember, like Syria, the new government of Syria requires Russia to give to them Assad. A lot of questions they have to Assad. A lot of people was murdered by him. So we will see how this visit will be and whether Bashar Assad reappeared in these talks between President Putin and the leader of Syria, al-Shara.
Okay, if we get Mr. Williams' take here now as well on this topic. Now, Moscow is hosting, obviously, al-Shara to cement its Middle East role because they've lost Assad, as Mr. Yus had said there. Now, is the West somehow underestimating Russia's parallel diplomacy as a war-winning tool? I mean, Mr. Yus is not convinced by this, that it's not going to be a movable thing whereby Russia will be able to win over Syria again.
Yes, I think the West is underestimating the potential for Russia to be involved in the Middle East. It has extensive links with the Middle East, despite its defeat in Syria. And the Arab countries generally don't want to appear subservient to President Trump, subservient to the United States. And so the Arab countries have an interest in hedging their bets and hedging against the United States and maintaining contact with Russia. Yes, President Trump is triumphant for the moment in negotiating a ceasefire and a hostage exchange, but this deal it remains to be seen whether this deal will hold or not. It's very doubtful, but Russia is a constant in the Middle East.
Okay, Mr. Ust, now if Western aid continues to wane or fade, while Russia continues to mobilize the 2 million reservists, is Ukraine being pushed towards a forced negotiating table on Moscow's terms, given these set of conditions? And can Ukraine maintain its current defense posture without these long-range weapons? I know you said this isn't a game changer, but given the current circumstances, it's a way to hold back.
Reham, of course, we needed those rockets. First of all, as I said, to attacking the Russian military facilities like in Yelabuga. But even if we didn't receive the Tomahawk missiles, I don't think that it can seriously change the Ukrainian position on the battlefield. Of course, in case if we receive it, it improved our position, but it not make it in the victory position. Military experts like to say that now Russia has serious advantage, and the receiving of those rockets make something like narrowing this position, but not make Ukraine in better position. Approximately half an hour ago, we talked with Mr. Nicholas on another TV channel, on Al Qaeda TV, and in that moment, I received information that Russia sent their missile on Ukraine, on Kiev, on capital where I'm situated. And of course, it's always create a problem when Russia can have option to attack a lot of parts in Ukraine as they have this weapon. Ukraine don't have so many weapons, and receiving it make at least the equality in this situation.
Yes,
but even with,
exactly, yes. As you said there, that Ukraine is running out of supplies. If this continues, how will Ukraine not be forced onto the negotiating table?
So, of course, Ukraine is ready to fight because, first of all, Russia occupied large part of our territory. If we will calculate in 2014, it's approximately 20% of Ukrainian territory now occupied, but only 0.7 of the 20% was occupied for last 1,000 days. It means that on the one hand, Russia had progress, but on the other, it's not such a serious dynamic. And Ukraine now still ready to fight. We still think that it's a war of economics. It's a war of attrition. Approximately months ago, I write a book under the name The Russian Economy, Reliable, Rare, or Perfect Storm, where I describe the main problems of Russian economy. And I think that, especially in the next year, where Russia will be in the large deficit, and next 3 years, according to Russian budget, they will face this problem. I think that the situation of seeing Russia on the negotiation table will increase, not because Russia ready for those talks, but because Russian economy not ready for this war. And that's what Ukraine needs, what Ukrainian partners need, to constantly press on the Russian economy and to explain to Russia that as long as Russia in this war has more chances to face with the collapse of the economy. And you know that if Russian, according to Russian budget, they will have deficit for next 3 years, it means 7 years in a row with budget deficit. The same picture was before the end of the Soviet Union history. So Russia now on this way, on the way of actually enormous problems that end the history of Soviet Union. So if Russia don't want to repeat it, probably they will go to this negotiation, and I think that economic pressure will be. As for military part, yes, it's hard for Ukraine, but we are ready for those fights. We are ready to be in it, and you see that front line, on the other hand, demonstrate small Russian success, but only small. We could not say that Russia now ready to return to surrounding Kiev, where I'm living, or surrounding Kharkov. That Russia, of course, planned a year ago or so, but now we're still in this battle, and there is more and more signs that it's worse turned into practically a frozen war, where we don't see a success of each of the parts. And it means that economy will play more and more important role, which I said before, that more expectations that economy make the dot in this war. Thank you, Reham.
Okay, Mr. Williams, now you heard Mr. Uster. He's cautiously determined or optimistic about the ability of the Ukrainians to hold their ground. Now, given Ukraine's battlefield lessons when it comes to drones, electronic warfare, as well as the industrial scale attrition, should NATO somehow overhaul its entire defense doctrine now and learn from the Ukrainian style of attempting to hold their ground with the limited resources they have?
Yes, one comment. If the Russian situation and economic situation is bad, I'm afraid the situation for Ukraine is worse. The manpower situation is critical, and the Russians are pressing ahead. But what does this mean for NATO? I think NATO's trying to update and adapt to this new way of warfare, but it's a long way behind. And Russians and Ukrainians, of course, have experience in this modern way of warfare, this use of drones, this intelligent use of drones to affect the battlefield. NATO is a long way behind, and that's why NATO has pledged to increase defense expenditures to as much as 5% of GDP. It's it'll take a long time to catch up, and that's why NATO wants to support Ukraine, but has to defend itself primarily.
Okay, Mr. Now, Zelensky just met with arms makers like Raytheon. Does this signal Kiev is betting on an escalation, not diplomacy, to end this war?
I'm not sure that anyone has got an idea how to end this war except President Putin. And yes, the Ukrainians have now got many contracts, many cooperations with British, American, French, German companies. But as I said, the manpower, it's not the equipment that is missing, it's the manpower for Ukraine. I wish them well, but Russia is steadily increasing its pressures and increasing its armament. The Ukrainians cannot, even with Tomahawks, destroy sufficient Russian equipment to win this war.
Mr. Us, can we get your take here? Now, you heard Mr. Williams there talking about the idea that, yes, Russia may be in dire straits, but Ukraine is probably in a worse situation. Now, does Kiev's view of the proposed Tomahawk missile transfer, is it viewed as something that could be used as a leverage for peace, or just a prolonging of the escalations and obviously given the set of circumstances that Ukraine is going through, can they afford to continue this battle?
You know, Riham, actually, for Ukraine, it's clear that Russia actually wants to destroy Ukraine. So every weapon that's given to Ukraine prolong the survival of Ukraine, because for Russia, targets is clear: destroy the Ukraine as a country, Ukraine as a nation. You know, Russia constantly repeat the phrase, "We didn't change our targets." If we return to February 2022, Russia said two things: demilitarization means no army, and denationalization means no Ukrainian nation. And of course, as it's battle for our survival, of course we are ready to fight, and every weapon. When someone said that it's prolonging war, it's prolonging our survival. It's helped to us to survive in this war.
But you
That's
would
why,
want to end, I mean, any
yes.
war will definitely end eventually on the negotiating table. Ukraine would probably want to be on the negotiating table at a relatively equal footing. If this prolongs, can the Ukrainians do this, or will they have to give in and give a lot of concessions to the Russians?
So of course we will see. Of course, I agree that our economy is not in the best situation, but the main difference that Ukraine has good partners. It's European countries. It's the United States of America. Yes, we know position of Donald Trump not to give military financial aid to Ukraine, but at least some structures close to the United States, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, NEFCO, European Development. So Japan, South Korea, Australia, Canada. So it's a long, long list of countries that help into Ukraine. And as for Russia, yes, Russia received the shells, Russia received rockets from the Northern Korea. Russia can receive fuel from Belarus, but Russia could not receive money from Northern Korea and Belarus. If someone says that China will help to Russia by money, I don't think that China are ready to do that. China, of course, interested in prolonging that war. China don't need a fast victory of each of the sides. No, not only they don't want Ukrainian victory, they don't want Russia victory actually too. So that's why I don't think that Russia has so many partners that will help them in economic way. As for the position on the negotiation table, Ukraine believes that we can improve it. And actually receiving long-range missiles, first of all, it's opportunity, as I said, to destroy Yelabuga, or if Russia, as I mentioned today, was attacked on Kiev, city where I'm living, according to information, Russia sent their rocket on one of Kiev power station. It means attack on Ukrainian electricity. Now let's imagine what will be if Ukraine receive Tomahawk, and those rockets could be used against Moscow electricity. If Russia set a trade line, according to US calculation, they crossed 36 red lines since the beginning of full-scale war, and no reaction from Russia. As was no reaction on when Turkey shut down Russian airplanes. So I don't think that nothing changed, and those rockets only will help to Ukraine to survive more. Thank you, Reham.
Okay, if we could get Mr. Williams' opinion here as well, final words here, if you could, really quickly. Now, considering Russia's increased drone warfare capacity and the massive mobilization, has the West reached a point of aid fatigue that risks prolonging the conflict?
I think that the West is running out of resources to help Ukraine. Yes, that it's committed to help Ukraine, but it's not entirely fatigue. It's the huge resources that Ukraine needs in order to fight this war against Russia. And those resources are not there. And that's why they're talking about using this money deposited, foreign currency deposited in Europe by Russia, using that to finance Ukrainian support, because European countries are, particularly in the West, failing to grow in terms of economy and failing to satisfy their populations in terms of standard of living.
Thank you so much, but unfortunately we're out of time. But thank you for joining me. That was Mr. Nicholas Williams, the former NATO official, as well as Mr. Ivan Us, the Ukraine Institute Specialist Historian from Ukraine. Thank you so much for your valuable insights. Thank you both. And as diplomacy and deterrence collide, the path to peace in Ukraine hangs in the balance between Tomahawk threats, fading aid, and Moscow's global maneuvering. The world holds its breath. This brings us to the end of today's episode of Think Tank, which always unveils a very complex world we live in. I'm Reham Moisi. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more here on Q News.